So, Welcome back, everyone. Today we are back for this week. Last week we read Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. It's a really interesting book. Murakami is one of my favorite writers. I've read many of his books, and Norwegian Wood was one of my first books I read from him. And I read it almost 10 years before. So, when I read it once again this time, it felt completely different. And yeah, we will discuss a bit about how it felt. How was it for you, Anup? How did you like
I don't know. For me, it felt like you are taking revenge for all those books.
it?
So you're kind of saying like, yeah, it's interesting and everything. I found it to be like really sad.
Yeah, I, I'm not going to I'm not going to lie to you. I don't remember the book to be that sad. I always thought,
Mm,
I think when I read it, I always was more focused into the romance aspect of the book and not so much the depressing suicidal aspect of it, the mental sickness aspect of it. And
mm,
I always saw these characters as very queer, very different, right? And
mm,
in a sense, kind of felt everybody's feeling. And this is the beauty of Murakami's book is he really explains everything, every minute detail, and uh, you really get to be inside the setting that the character is in. That's something that I
mm.
always enjoyed about it. Maybe we can start with your Anup's typical synopsis of the book, if you have
Okay.
it in you to explain it.
The fun thing is, I just read it like 8 minutes ago, right? Like
Mm-mm.
to the end, so I'm still kind of, yeah, um, feeling nausea. But anyways, let's start with it. So a lot of stages in the book. I'll start with the first one. We have our main guy, like protagonist, who is traveling to Hamburg, I think, the place
Mm-mm.
where Vash is,
Mm-mm.
and then he kind of uh, thinks about the past, right? Specifically about this called a girl called Naoki,
Mm-mm.
and then he starts like telling the story. So it seems like he's in love with Naoki, and but he says like, yeah, but she didn't love me, right? And
Mm-mm.
slow by slow, all these figures, all these characters, like you get to know them, right? Like
Mm-mm.
the backstory of Naoki, the backstory of our main character who played a role, and it seems Naoki is actually the girlfriend of, Naoki was the girlfriend of his friend,
Mm-mm.
and then like we start speaking about this friend for a while, and then we kind of and then the author writes that he actually committed suicide,
Mm-mm.
that boyfriend of Naoki, right?
Mm-mm.
And ever since that event, it was a really traumatic event for both of those people. And Naoki, she couldn't cope with that. She tried to for a
Mm-mm.
while, and she couldn't cope with that. And then she went to a sanatorium, right,
Mm-mm.
where she wanted to, I think, get better of her sickness.
Mm-mm.
Um, so um, that's where our protagonist actually starts becoming unstable, right? So
Mm-mm.
because he actually is starting to miss Naoki,
Mm-mm.
and because our main protagonist, he also doesn't have that many friends, right?
Mm-mm.
So like the connection with Naoki is actually really special to him, and then he meets a girl called Midori,
Mm-mm.
and slow by slow he starts developing feeling for her. It comes
Mm-mm.
really slow, but he in the end admits that he is more in love with Midori than with Naoki, right?
Mm-mm.
Meanwhile, he also goes to meet Naoki. She has a roommate there
Mm-mm.
called, what was the name again?
Reiko.
Reiko, exactly. She was a former pianist,
Mm-mm.
and she also had problems. That's why she came to the sanatorium. She even had a child and a husband, I think, but she left them to come to
Mm-mm.
that place, right? And yeah, by the end of some time, our protagonist actually starts falling in love with Midori, like the
Mm-mm.
girl he met, and then he writes about his. Then he confesses to Reiko,
Mm-mm.
first,
Mm-mm.
because Naoki was not in the situation to, I think, write messages and stuff like that. The situation was
Mm-mm.
worsening for a while,
Mm-mm.
and afterwards, like just a little bit afterwards, Naoki also commits suicide,
Mm-mm.
and yeah, slow by slow, we come to the end of the story.
Yeah, it's basically for me, I thought it was more like a growing up story from a young adult to a man, basically. And our main character does this through trials and tribulations that he experiences. And but this is not an adventure story, it's a typical slice of life drama kind of story. So there's nothing major happening in his life, but
I
basically,
get you. I get you, but it's not that typical, right? Like, I mean, having so many suicides in some place, I would say that was the rather unique experiences that our protagonist was experiencing, right?
mm, I think it depends. It depends. There is a saying. I'm not saying, but I don't know if there's a scientific basis to it. But people with mental illnesses are more likely to uh, group together in a sense.
Mm,
So you
mm,
would find
mm,
people from the same friend group doing suicide, multiple of them, and
mm,
so I wouldn't say just because we are not exposed to that group would probably not mean that
mm,
yeah, there's no situation. I know a person who committed suicide, and his sister had also committed suicide. So in a
mm,
really
mm,
unfortunate way, that sometimes
mm.
this is, I think, inherited qualities, um,
Okay.
either inherited from the family or inherited by the
Mm,
circle that
mm,
you have,
mm,
right? This
mm.
real tendency to feel downtrodden, and
No,
yeah,
definitely. I also heard that sometimes it's also genetics, right? Like sometimes you actually inherit this kind of stuff, it seems.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's the thing about it. At least I felt that the way the story progresses is our main character has this massive loss, right? And
Mm,
then he's not able to cope with it. He has to leave his home city. His best friend kills himself, right? And then he goes to a new city and tries to start a life, but funnily he meets this girl who's the girlfriend of his best friend in the new city
mm,
in Tokyo, and then yeah, he connects back with her, and in a, I would say, rather cruel way, that he's kind of reminded of the moments that he spent.
mm,
And yeah, oftentimes he's probably moving between this, uh, I would say, uh, nostalgic place, a place with Naoko where he shares the past, and transition towards future with different characters he has, like Nagasawa with Stormtrooper and
mm,
Midori and everybody else. So I feel it was more like a growing up, coming of age story. And yeah,
mm,
stylistically, that's what Murakami usually writes
mm,
his story. He really creates these weird characters with specific traits and then explains them in such a beautiful
mm,
way that you feel a strange kind of connection with them. And I feel this is completely unlike all the stories that we have read so far, because in terms of technique he's very specifically detailed, but he's not detailed to give you the complete setting of the place, but rather only the unique or the outstanding, not even outstanding, exceptional aspects of the place. So something that is going
mm,
to strike your mind. And yeah, that's why it was a slow burner read. You start to slowly get into it, and then
mm.
after some time you're really into what the character is doing.
Yeah, growing up was definitely a theme in this book. I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's what I've also experienced. Yeah, like um, I don't know, like I've heard a lot of stories about Japan and
Mm-mm,
also about the suicides there,
mm-mm,
right? So I've heard like there's this one famous forest, right, where
yeah.
people go there. I don't know what it's called again, but it is. a really beautiful forest, but
Mm-hmm.
people go there and commit suicide there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. For me, this book, like, it actually even strengthened that argument. That people in Japan, like, there is like a lot of suicides going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
But
that
then
was,
again, like, it is a fiction, right? Like,
yeah,
I know we should treat it as a fiction, but I was thinking, like, maybe there is a reason why the author is writing like this.
yeah. I read somewhere that a lot of people questioned if this is what happened to the author actually, but the
Mm,
author dismissed it. Murakami is the author. Uh, this is one of his best-selling book, but as somebody who
mm,
has read his book multiple times, and
mm,
because I read this the first as the first Murakami book and the most latest Murakami book, I can tell you that this is probably not so typical Murakami book in the sense
uh,
there's a lot of
mm,
how do I say, the story is very straightforward. So I have read other Murakami
mm,
books, and his stories are not very straightforward.
mm,
His characters are just experiencing supernatural events or
mm,
unique, crazy events, and then they just live through it. And you are always left wondering what's happening or what happened and so on. But this book,
mm,
it's straightforward. It's a bit more romantic, and then yeah, is going to uh, know what they are saying. One aspect
mm,
that I
mm,
found very interesting after reading the book that we read last, right? A lot of the
mm.
dialogues in this book felt really unnatural to me. I don't know how you felt it, but everybody is
Because of
using complete
Heart of
sentence.
Darkness, you mean?
Sorry?
Like, you mean Heart of Darkness, like the last one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in Heart of
Mm,
Darkness, it felt like uh, the dialogues were organic. It was more like how we would speak in our day-to-day life, but in this book, every dialogue felt more formal, that people were speaking in complete sentences, which we don't usually do, right? We don't always speak in complete sentences. And
I don't know, man. I don't know. I have exact opposite take, to be honest.
okay.
Like, in this case, because not the way of speaking, but the way it was written, right?
Mm-mm,
Like, I felt like that the people here actually spoke that what they thought, right?
mm-mm, mm,
It was not, I don't know, it was not written too complicated, and I actually thought that I would also speak like that in in the day. You know what I mean?
no, no, I
So
get
in
what you're
Alta.
yeah, but I feel all the characters were speaking in the same way. Like there was no, how do I say, dialectical
Oh, okay, okay,
changes,
okay.
right? Everybody was
Mm,
using the same words, they were using the same vocabulary, right? Everybody seemed to have very wide vocabulary, and even when we speak in this podcast or whatever you want to say, uh, you use a completely different kind of vocabulary to what I use. But in the
mm,
book, I felt everybody had this vast array of words they can just pick from, and
mm,
nobody had their distinct way of speaking. And in a sense, it felt like the writer was speaking himself and not
mm.
necessarily the characters themselves speaking. I'm not going to say that it was bad per se, right? But I think the book would have had
No,
more
yeah,
personality if there
I
was
think I
variety.
get what you mean. Yeah, I think I get what you mean. The diversity of the speaking style, yeah, it was definitely the same now that you say.
Mm,
Hmm. Or let me think. Hmm. Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
mm.
you're onto something.
Do you know this book, Norwegian Wood, is written uh, based on the song by Beatles?
Yeah, like I could have told, like, music is also a big theme in this book, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So especially Reiko, she's playing all different stuff, right?
yeah.
But not only her, like, even before she came, like, it was described into a great detail, I found,
Mm,
what kind of music they were listening, what they were doing, and stuff like that. So
mm,
uh, I could tell that it is based on that.
Yeah, that was quite fascinating. This book is actually named Tokyo Blues in Japan, as far as I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So
completely different from
yeah,
Norwegian woods.
yeah. I felt while reading the book, which I didn't notice the first time, but because I've read this more than once, I was more perceptive of everything that was written, and I found that a lot of it was catered towards a Western audience. For example, the cultural references was, I would say, exclusively Western, in the sense that I would not expect. Okay, I would expect a lot of American influence in Japan, especially the 60s and
Mm,
70s, but probably would
mm,
not be completely, or the references would not be from, for example, there's reference Great Gatsby, they reference Voltaire,
mm,
they reference
mm,
Beatles, and so on. They are listening to classical music, and uh, yeah, Japan at that time was probably going through a bit of a transition phase, right? Back in
mm,
90s, there was post-war reconstruction phase. Japan was going through an economic boom, and people were uh, acclimatized about the new lifestyle.
mm,
They were more westward thinking, but I felt the book kind of was exclusively westward thinking,
mm.
and yeah, that was something I noticed this time, and
For me,
uh,
that was also rather surprising. Like I actually would have thought that the 1960s Japan to be way more conservative than what was described in the book, right?
mm, yeah,
Um, but it was pretty liberal.
yeah.
And funny thing is, like, I actually used to read about one person
Mhm.
who escaped the Second World War. Okay,
Mhm, mhm,
he was he was in the jungle or something.
mhm,
And he basically thought, like, even after the war ended for a
mhm,
long time, that the war is still going on, right?
mhm,
And later on, like, he was also not a good person because he was, I think, also going after some civilians and all that stuff
mhm,
to survive, right,
mhm,
during the time. But he didn't know that the war had actually
mhm,
ended. So what happened was, after a while, student, I think,
mhm,
he went in the jungle searching for this guy, a Japanese student, and then he had conversation with that guy, and then he told him that the war actually ended. And then he came back into Japan, right? I
mhm,
don't know. I think, like, maybe that's wrong, but I think
mhm,
it was something around 10 or 20 years after
mhm,
the Second World War. Okay,
mhm,
and he was treated like a celebrity, but he himself was not happy,
mhm.
because he used to say, like, okay, it has changed a lot,
Yeah,
like, it's not that what it used to be anymore. So
yeah,
maybe, like, during the 1960s, it actually was, like, pretty liberal. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. As far as I'm aware, at least there's a saying that in 1980s Japan was living in the 2000, and
Mm.
in 2020s Japan is still living in the 2000s. So they were like, Japan used to be one of the richest country back in the days, and disco used to be the home of Japanese music, so it was quite liberal,
Mm,
uh, which is quite unique. At least I would understand in the post-war uh, influence, because America played a large influence in the Reconstruction, which would also mean they played direct influence in the cultural
mm,
aspect of it as well. And yeah, it's
mm,
kind of a theme here, but I would say more so that there's a mix and amalgamation of different cultures going on. It's basically a slice of
mm,
life, which is
mm,
interesting. Do you have a favorite character?
I don't know, man. Like, every character was, like, um, really weird. But I think my favorite character is Midori. I
Yeah,
liked her a lot.
yeah, me too.
The way she talked, she was, like, really raw, and she was, like, really ground to earth person, I felt. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I also really like Midori. I remember reading the first time. I really liked her. I was kind of wishing I would meet somebody like her. And that was quite fascinating. I also
Yeah.
like the trooper character. To be honest,
Mm, mm, mm,
is something unique about him, right? There's
mm,
idiosyncrasies about him, and yeah, that's one thing you really like about I really like about Murakami's book is all the characters have their own idiosyncrasies, and
mm,
they're not
mm.
afraid to express it, right? Most often,
Yeah.
uh, society, this everybody's trying to hide them.
Mm,
We
mm,
don't want to be our own self, but
mm,
in Murakami's book, he's really exposing the uh, experiences, the idea, the thoughts, the wackiness of every character, and that is really
mm,
fascinating. In a sense, it's really raw, and
mm,
I
mm.
really liked it.
Yeah.
So there are many suicides in the book. Which suicide was the one that was very heartfelt for you?
Yeah. Mm. I told you before this podcast, right? For me, it was the one. But then again, have we mentioned that before? Yeah, come. Like, I mean, we already spoiled it, right?
Mm-hmm,
So, for me, it was, I think, Naoki. Like,
mm-hmm.
that came like really all of a sudden,
Yeah, yeah.
and even Kizuki was like came like pretty fast. In Kizuki's case, it was like the fact that he was playing pool with um, our main character, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And the first game, I think our main protagonist won, but in the next three matches, like he actually, like Kizuki, he tried to win it a lot, and then
mm-hmm.
he said something like, "Today I need to win,"
Yeah, yeah.
and that day he was doing the suicide, and that felt like really crazy to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he also explains the way he does suicide in the
Mm,
driving car, uh,
mm,
like a carbon monoxide poisoning method of suicide,
yeah,
which I would say very smart for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old.
mm, mm, mm.
Uh, yeah. For me, I
What do you
found,
think? What do you think? What were they not satisfied with? Like, why did they do suicide? What do you think? Like these two characters in particular. I mean, Naoki, we know, because she couldn't cope with the suicide of Kizuki,
yeah, yeah.
right? But like, what do you think was the reason for Kizuki?
I don't know. I mean, that's not explained, and I understand that it's probably not just one thing that people commit suicide over. It's just
Mm,
uh, I had a friend back in high school who committed suicide, right? And
mm,
it really pained me because
mm,
uh, he was this kid who used to sit alone in the class, not speak with so many, and I always made an effort to go and speak with him, right? Every
mm,
day I would
mm,
just go like, "Hey, what's up?
mm,
How are you doing?" and so on and everything. And I still remember the day when he committed suicide. I don't know the exact date of it, but I know it's the day before
mm,
the Martyrs' Day in Nepal.
mm, mm,
And we didn't have a public holiday in our school, so
mm,
all the kids were complaining. And suddenly the principal comes back and says that we have an unfortunate incident. One of our students committed suicide,
mm,
and the next day will be off in morning. And
mm,
I went back home, and in a way, I felt kind of responsible for him
mm,
because maybe I didn't put enough effort, or maybe I was pandering him, or maybe I was, really annoying
mm,
him, or something
mm,
like
mm,
that. And I had a really difficult time. So I went to one of my cousins, and
mm,
then we spoke about it. I told him like I'm having a tough day. I just want somebody to speak with. And then he was a doctor, and we spoke for some time, and he said like this is a disease, right? You can't explain it. It's just a disease. It's a chemical imbalance in your head, and it
mm,
can be cured by using medication. But you have
mm,
to recognize that it's a disease that it's not your fault, and it's not even his fault.
mm,
He just got sick at the wrong time, and so often there's so many people, uh, yeah, who commit suicide even though there's nothing, even they're living a perfect life. Think about, for example, somebody like Kurt Cobain, who was highly successful, highly
mm,
sought after, and he still commits suicide. Somebody like Yamabuddha,
mm,
who
mm,
have reached the pinnacle of their field, what everybody is envious about, and still they do it. And it's
mm,
just chemical imbalance in the head, and you need to take good care of yourself. I'm sure, I
mm,
don't know how much you feel, but oftentimes I feel really miserable over no reason at all. It's called feeling
mm,
blue. Like, why do you feel blue? Is you just feel sad
mm.
over nothing, and
No, definitely. No, no, sadness is there, but I think it's not
you
only
just need to
sadness, right?
escalate. You just need to escalate that
Mm,
to a nth degree,
okay,
and
okay,
then
okay. Mm,
you would probably
mm,
realize that okay, somebody feels so negative that they want to take
mm.
in their own life.
I mean, like, there must be something where you might. I can imagine, like, I can only imagine the motivation, right? So, there must be something. What you think of is not solvable,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
What needs to be solved, so you have a problem that can't be solved,
yeah.
and then you do it, right? And
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. I didn't see it in based on that what our main character told us, like I didn't see a reason in what Kizuki was suffering.
mm,
The one reason may be the case because they were kind of saying they were together since their childhood, I think,
mm,
like
mm,
Naoki and Kizuki, right? Not together, but like they were really close,
mm,
inseparable, and then their relation was afterwards kind of natural, right?
mm, mm,
And they used to kind of say that because of that, because they were so busy with each other, they actually forgot how to cope with the society,
mm,
right? So maybe it was a society, maybe
mm,
he just couldn't. I don't know. The older you grow, the more you have to deal with the society. It's not
mm,
like in the childhood, right? So maybe he had to deal a lot with the society after a while with other people, and he just couldn't, because he just felt he was not being understood. You know
mm, mm.
what I mean? So
Yeah,
maybe that was the reason. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, they were 18 at that time and probably
Mm,
had to make career choices. Probably
mm,
had
mm,
to
mm.
think about something to do in your
Yeah,
life, and
yeah,
just have a lot of hormones in that time, and
mm,
you
mm.
kind of, yeah, crazy.
Also,
Uh,
pressure is a big issue, right? Like,
exactly, exactly. And we are told that pressure in Japanese society is quite high.
yeah,
If
yeah,
I'm not wrong, Japan is still the country with the highest suicide rate. So,
that would be
yeah.
the case there.
The one other thing that I felt was kind of disjointed for me this time, unlike
Mm,
previously, is the characters sound so young. They're in their 20s, early 20s. I feel like I'm already old. And
yeah,
yeah, these characters, they're speaking about stuff they do in their 20s, and I think back and yeah, it's quite fun when you're in your 20s, and uh, that was quite fascinating for me as well to realize that oh, it's been 10 years since I read it, and now I can no longer relate with these characters, which I could relate
mm,
for the first time I read. The first time I read, these characters were more fascinating to me. They were more
yeah,
relatable to me, but not anymore. So it was a
yeah.
very unique experience, and uh, I would say the book, I don't know if you know, but Norwegian Wood is regarded as a modern classic,
Mm,
right? Uh, Murakami, I think, even won an Nobel Prize, or he was nominated to one. And yeah, he's regarded as one of the eminent
mm,
writers these days. I just want to tell you, there's
mm,
a very unique story of how Murakami became a writer. I don't know if you
mm.
looked it up, but
But you told it to me once, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So apparently he was watching this baseball game, and
mm,
some batter struck the ball so well that he
mm,
thought, "Man, I wish I can do something as well as he does." And he thought, "I
mm,
can actually write." And then he started writing,
mm.
and yeah, everything
No.
else is history.
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah.
So that was it. Yeah, I really enjoyed rereading Norwegian Wood. Uh,
I didn't know. It was, I don't know. I
I'm
think you're taking revenge
I'm
in your own
sorry to
way.
put you through it. Uh, so for next week, what do you want to recommend?
We talked about this, right? Before. Let's read the book called The Mezzanine.
Okay. The Mezzanine.
Um,
Nicholas Baker.
yeah,
Nicholson Baker.
Nicholson Baker.
Okay.
Baker.
Bach.
Or Baker, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you very much once again. Yeah, it was a nice read.
No problem, man.
And thank you again for
Everyone for listening.
keeping up this habit of reading one book a week. All of our listeners also can look up for The Mezzanine by Nicholson Baker, Parker, or whatever. And yeah,
Mm.
we speak again next week.